Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farhan. Once again, we are going to talk about the politics of the country, especially with the focus on what is going on right now, especially given that the Prime Minister of Pakistan yesterday had a review of the performance of all the ministers, and he's giving them tasks to achieve in the next 3 months. And he has also reviewed the performance that is important. He says that the ministers have to perform really well. Extraordinary performances expected of them. This is one aspect that we are going to touch upon. Then there is NAB activity. NAB is in action. We know Khaja Saad Rafiq and his brother were nabbed today, and that is also a big news. But apart from that, there are certain aspects regarding National Assembly that are important. For example, we still don't have a head of Public Accounts Committee. Then we are going to talk about the possibility of legislation, especially when it comes to the issues like legal and judicial reform in this country. We are going to talk about all these matters and more in today's program. In order to help us understand these issues, we are joined by Arif Chaudhary Sahab, former President, Islamabad Bar Association, one of Pakistan's leading lawyers. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Next to him is Raja Faisal, a journalist, analyst, is a friend also. Thank you very much for being part of the program. Same goes for Naqvi, analyst and journalist. I was hoping that someday you are going to allow your beard to gray so that I can call you a senior journalist. But today I'm not going to do that. Arif Chaudhary Sahab, I have to start with you. And I have to understand, let us start with the legal side and the constitutional side. How important is the seat of Chairman Public Accounts Committee?
I think it is the most important committee, especially it's the committee who has to take care of all the accounts. And as it is obvious with the name, but it doesn't mean only the accounts, all acts, whatever have been done, performed.
Okay.
And even all these issues which are coming before NAB, many of them have been referred.
Financial transactions.
Financial transactions conducted by the government.
Government.
Any mega scam can be taken care of, can be accounted for by this committee. It's a very powerful committee.
So how does it work? First, it is audited, and those audit paras then appear before the Public Accounts Committee.
Yeah.
What are the powers of Chairman Public Accounts Committee?
Chairman Public Accounts Committee has the power to summon anybody.
Okay.
Whosoever.
Subpoena powers.
Yes, subpoena power. And that is, whosoever and howsoever high he might be, he can be summoned by the chairman.
Right.
And he can be accounted for. He has a lot of powers.
This argument, sir, that somehow the current opposition leader should not be Chairman Public Accounts Committee, does it make sense to you, sir?
It makes a lot of sense.
Right.
The reason is that, I would go for two reasons. Number one, it's not in the Constitution. It's only a methodology adopted, and you call it, even it is not a custom.
Yeah.
It was a decision between two political parties.
Right.
And
Charter of Democracy.
and they decided for their own convenience or for whatever arrangement, and it's not a bad arrangement, even otherwise I would appreciate it. But the situation is that the second part which I'm going to say here is that because that particular individual who is the leader of the opposition, who should have been the chairman Public Accounts Committee, he himself is in the he has been put to task by the NAB, and he is in jail, and lot of corruption charges. Firstly, against his brother, who was the Prime Minister
of Pakistan.
And all these audit paras basically relate to that period.
Right.
So if he sits over there, and on all those deeds or misdeeds of his former, his brother and former Prime Minister.
And he is supposed to actually audit them
Yeah, ordered them.
It is a kind of contradiction, right, sir?
It is
Let me go to Raja Faisal. Raja Faisal, you have been, very vocal, and you never make bones about which party you are supporting. Tell me, even if the seat cannot go to Shehbaz Sharif, why is it that the government and the speaker have not been able to decide who should be chairing it? Is it not important to, come up with a decision as soon as possible?
I think they should have decided by now, but there must be, this is a very important seat if we talk about the things that
Shouldn't
can be.
say something like that. Then I will ask how important.
It is very important, as sir has earlier mentioned that
Don't use his words. Tell me your own take. Share your own take.
Well, the problem is the authority it would be carrying when opposition leader, if opposition leader is made, chair this seat, then of course it would be disastrous for the government as well. Why? Because they can summon anyone in future, and if they summon,
they summon anybody. They can audit people or review the audit paras. What happens next?
Well,
if you are found guilty, they don't have any judicial powers, do they?
they don't have any judicial powers, but of course it would be something which will be discussed on the media, which will be echoed in
Chaudhary
the.
Sahab,
Yeah, it's
what-
more than, I'm sorry to interrupt you again, I'm very sorry. It's more than that, because, anything decided by them, it's not only decided, I would say, found by them, any observation made by them.
Any contradiction?
That carries a weight, because on the basis of that, legal process shall proceed.
Right. You want to finish your
Yeah,
point?
I would say that, like, one, there is no hard and fast rule, even if it was an arrangement between two political parties to appoint the chairman of Public Accounts Committee from the opposition. It was not practiced.
Okay.
For once, we had this precedence when Nadeem Afzal Chand, being part of Pakistan People's Party at that time, was made chairman in absence of Chaudhary Nisar Ali Khan. So, one, it is not a hard and fast rule, even during the tenure of the two parties that are contesting on one side.
But the question is, why hasn't the government been able to come up with the name? We heard about Fakhr Imam Sahab, but even his name has not been finalized.
Well, I believe that the government is a bit skeptical because of the numbers, the number game. They don't have that overwhelming majority
They don't have to elect
in
a
the
chairman.
parliament, and they don't want to take or force any such decision which can lead to a further chaotic or chaos in the running of the house of the business.
Okay.
Now, the business of the house.
Do you agree with this idea that opposition leaders should not be, or the current opposition leader should not be head of PAC?
I partially agree to a part of it. I would
How?
explain, but I believe that unless proven guilty, he's an accused, and we should not.
But
and
he is an accused who's mostly not available.
He's an elected leader.
I
of the
agree with that,
opposition.
but he is usually not out there.
He has
He's
agreed,
incarcerated.
He has, and secondly, he has agreed that if there are some cases related to the tenure of his brother, Mian Nawaz Sharif, of the last 5 years, he is ready to form a subcommittee of the Public Accounts Committee, which can be headed by any member from the PTI or any member from the government, and they can proceed with such cases.
I understand,
So
but there is a matter of logistics. If a person is behind bars, right? I know that now his residence has been declared a sub-jail, but if somebody is being inquired, somebody who is arrested, it is one thing to bring him to the floor of the house. But for every public accounts committee, it becomes quite difficult, right?
No,
So what happens then? Are you going to take the rest of the members to the jail or sub-jail for that matter?
Now that again, it's a quagmire. Look, we are into such a funny situation. It's a comedy of errors.
Okay.
Like, a person who is being investigated can, like, at the same time like be in a chair where he is summoning each one of the people who are one way or the other related to somehow or can further affect the inquiry which is going on against him. So now if that happens, again, when I said like partially I agree with it, like look, if it happens like this and if it happens amicably and if it helps to run the business of the National Assembly, the proceedings of the National Assembly in a smooth manner, fine, that can be done. We should go towards like some reconciliatory effort by the government, because this country already we have past 100 days and now even we are going towards that 6 months thing, and then obviously this government
Naturally,
has
that is
to-
how time works.
It has
You
to
keep on moving.
now. If this government has to function, there has to be a breathing space for this government where it is not being pushed by the opposition in the assembly
So
to the
Public
walls.
Accounts Committee is going to be the bargaining chip. Are you saying that?
Somehow the opposition has managed to use it as a bargaining chip.
Okay. So if Shehbaz Sharif is not made the chair, then what happens?
Now they have not given a clear out strategy on that, but today when all this meeting was happening in the Parliament House, the clear message when they came out was that the consensus is that it has to be Shehbaz Sharif, and the opposition is not going to accept anyone else.
So what does it mean?
It means that
The government is not going to accede to
it
that
means
demand.
that if that doesn't happen, somebody else is appointed, then we would see all the opposition parties walking out of the proceedings, not letting any legislative business happen, not letting the proceedings.
Although that is not connected to the session of the parliament, PAC functions very separately in a different
But
room.
again, that would reflect upon the proceedings.
Perhaps that is the case, or perhaps the opposition is not going to participate in PAC meetings. But you have actually brought up another very important point, and that is about the hung parliament, sir. At this moment, we have literally, I mean, there is very little space for the government. On the same side, we also see a very important development. The government has talked about bringing in judicial reforms that are needed not only to correct the system, because at the lower levels there is a lot of problem, but also to improve the quality of delivery on National Action Plan. But with hung parliament, with opposition in this mood, do you think it is going to happen?
I think that's the dilemma of this government, because the government came on one point agenda, and that is they want to curb corruption, they want to fight corruption, and the allegations of corruption are mainly against those who have been in power prior to their coming into power, the present government, and they are two major political parties. And they are facing cases in the courts, and they are facing
At the very top.
Yeah, at the very top. So now, if the government resiles from its original agenda for which it stands for, it loses its very ground, of coming into power, and all what has been said throughout. And on the other hand, these two political parties, they are not in a mood to cooperate with the government in case the cases are not dropped or they don't get any, mileage
It
out
is
of.
called a paradox.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So that is the
Catch-22.
Yeah. So now I don't think there's a very rosy picture for the country, because I have been conversing all the time that the government should tone down, especially with the
Corruption rhetoric is...
no, corruption rhetoric should stay there, not rhetoric.
I mean-
Eradication of corruption should stay there.
Yeah, when I said, rhetoric, I meant optics.
Yeah,
the
because
work
they-
can go on,
yeah, they-
but when it comes to your stated position, it can be so
Yeah,
softened.
you don't have to give statements or come up in the parliament with all these speeches. I think because even if you don't make speeches, the process of accountability is going on, and your speeches do not add anything rather positively. Rather, in many cases, they have something to say. Hey, look, this is all because of the government. They are behind that. How did they know so
Yeah,
many
but
people are?
To opposition, that might appear that way. But to a voter of PTI, it might be, movement in the right direction. That you are speaking and you're showing what is going on.
No, no, but for that, you don't have to be all the times, making statements. One fine morning, whenever, the Prime Minister comes up or our Minister, they can, say that, look, what this is the rate of conviction here, but now we have built capacity in all these institutions, which is the requirement, because
We have empowered the institution.
yeah, we have empowered the institutions. NAB has been empowered.
How?
FIA.
How so? They haven't made any new law.
No, no, that's what it is. Because for that they need the cooperation of opposition.
Opposition.
Without, I would say avoid rhetoric because it doesn't serve
No,
any
correct me
purpose
if I'm
anywhere.
wrong. They need opposition to support making laws
Yeah.
that will apprehend
Yeah.
the opposition's leadership, and that is going to happen.
Yeah.
It won't.
No, no, it happened. Listen, the one thing I would, Mr. Patafi, I would add that in case you bring some a piece of legislation, proposed legislation, an enactment in the House, so everybody knows, look, this is the legislation they wanted to introduce, but the opposition is opposing this,
Right.
Yeah.
And then we have to talk about something else regarding ordinances, but later. Let me go to Raja Faisal, and Raja, you'll have to fight for your space because nobody is going to hand it to you. The question is about selling your soul. This is politics. In politics, you have to compromise the very spirit that brought you into politics. Do you think that PTI eventually will have to tone down not only its rhetoric, but its actions also regarding accountability? Or do you think that there is going to be an early election, so early that our heads are going to spin?
I think PTI has to maintain this, that they are not the ones who are actually holding everybody accountable for it. They need to maintain that they are not actually interfering in whatever the accountability watchdog is doing. Why? Because in recent times what we have seen that whatever the cases are, they were already pending cases. Even today's case, Khwaja Saad Rafiq's case, it wasn't initiated just when PTI took the office. It initiated last year. And of course, today they were captured. It has nothing to do with PTI. Basically, PTI is not interfering with whatever NAB is doing, and that's how the things should be.
And the previous government was interfering with that?
Well,
Because they lost their prime minister to accountability. They lost many other important people to accountability. Do you think that they were interfering in the accountability?
You must remember that Chief Justice, he actually summoned the previous chairman NAB, and he actually asked him, why didn't you reinitiate the cases?
Okay.
And
You're talking about Panama case, right? During the hearing of
During
Panama.
the
Hudaybiyah
No, but was it not during Panama Papers when he was brought and the
That
question was
yeah,
about
matter was
it?
brought
And he
before.
was-
no,
he
it
actually
was
said that he
before
wasn't
Panama
mandated
Papers
for
were-
it.
Yeah. And then, the court had to say that, it's a dead horse, it's
Exactly.
yeah.
And he had to say that he hadn't had the right mandate to do it. And now what we see is government is not actually interfering in whatever the NAB is doing.
No, but I understand that the government can behave as the anesthesia when an operation is going on, but the problem is operation is going on. And if Asif Ali Zardari is not being held accountable, PTI loses face. If he is being held accountable, the problem is People's Party is never going to forgive you that you are part of a system that is prosecuting him. Similarly, PMLN. So are you telling me that somehow a new rhetoric can deceive the opposition?
To be honest, what I believe that even the opposition parties, they have to, realize that this has
No, but
nothing
at
to
this
do with the government.
Hang on. At this moment, what we are talking about is that we have realized or somehow made peace with the fact that the opposition parties, particularly PMLN and People's Party are never going to compromise on their leaders, right? And they are, hence they are not going to compromise on the word corruption for their leadership. So they are not rational actors. What are you going to do then?
Well, I would suggest the same, that PTI should build up a narrative that it has nothing to do with them
For whom?
and the government.
For whom? For whom?
For the opposition leaders. Why? Because opposition leaders, they would keep on narrating the same thing, that they are being politically victimized for
So
it.
the government has to actually sit back and say, look, we don't have any control. We are not in the driving seat. Somebody else is doing it. So forget about it.
If somebody is being tried for whatever they have been doing in the past, then government should not be interfering in that.
Right, Isa
Okay,
Naqvi,
I
step in.
believe that it isn't what PTI should be worried about. What the actual thing is that they should worried about not losing their face to the people who have elected them.
Okay.
It isn't just about the mantra of taking action against the corrupt people who have looted this country. Side by side, they have to perform and they have to deliver for the people of this country.
To perform, they need new laws. To make those laws, they need opposition.
They do need opposition, but side by side, if their ministries, if the government is performing well on this front, and the opposition parties are trying to put hurdles in front of the government for their smooth sailing towards achieving those objectives, then the people of Pakistan will reject the opposition, and they will stand up against the opposition parties if they
In the
get
next
to
elections.
know-
In the next elections.
Even
What
before-
happens till then?
Till then, I think it's obviously the parliamentary business. I have been like repeating this thing again and again, that PTI is very naive and new when it comes to parliamentary business.
Inexperience is better word.
While
dearest.
while being in government,
Okay.
and the tone of some of the leaders of PTI, like. But yesterday we saw a slightly different thing. Madam Shiri Mazari, when she stood up in the parliament, she made a very good speech, which otherwise is not the kind of speeches that she usually used to
But
make
is it
while
not
sitting
what
on the
happens?
opposition benches.
You are in opposition, you are very angry, aggressive speeches. Happened to Khaja Asif, Khaja Saad Rafiq, umpteen
But
other
they had-
people. When you come into government, your attitude changes.
Yes, it changes, but this government needs to learn that quickly and has to.
It has learned, right?
It has. Some of them have learned. Some of them have yet not learned it. Even just yesterday, a minister had to take his words back.
Okay.
And
Which one? Which minister?
The information minister
Okay.
had to take one of his words back
Okay.
after the Speaker of the National Assembly, he intervened and he said that you shouldn't have used this word about the opposition, like some of the people in the opposition.
And who
or
is the speaker?
parliamentary-
Speaker comes from the same party.
Yeah,
So
he's
it
from-
means that
so
the government is
so
trying
the
to.
government is, but that gives a bad taste, and it had like almost
I
led
don't
to the
understand.
walkout of the opposition
In
from
the world,
proceedings.
in the parliaments, we have seen physical fights. We have seen people actually being crushed by chairs. I'm not saying we should be doing it, but using language that might offend this one or that one shouldn't be that much a big problem, as long as it is decent.
No, what we have learned, like I have been covering Parliament from like for the last about 13 to 14 years. And whatever I have seen, I can tell you of my experience. Other than the last 4 to 5 months, I can actually tell you that before that, we have always seen that there always has been a person from the government who had been appointed to go have some meetings, like in closed door meetings behind the curtain, have some meetings with the opposition parties, take them into confidence that we are going to give you this much of chance to do this much of bashing,
Right.
because it is the right of the opposition to criticize the government.
Okay.
And this is how the
And
parliamentary
you're
system
forgetting
works.
the role played by Abid Sher Ali, Faisal, of the other people, right?
Obviously, I do understand, but
Rana Sanaullah, for heaven's sake.
that was Punjab Assembly. I'm talking about National
even
Assembly, and
everywhere.
I can give you
Everywhere.
the example of Khurshid Shah, and he was that character.
Okay, reconciliation or not, the fact is that legal process is taking, its own course.
Law should.
Right, accountability is going on. And in that situation, opposition cannot afford to lose its leaders. They are not going to do it. I tell you, it is basic fact. Everybody knows it. So how do you convince them to, join you in making new laws?
That's where the government has to act smart.
How?
One, that
How?
they do not have to let the opposition play this victim card.
Okay.
They have to act smartly
No,
and
the victim
separate
card
itself
again is outside the
again.
arena. I'm talking about arena itself, the parliament. How do you convince them to vote for you?
I think
When any
I have to actually take this question.
I want to add something into
Please
it.
go ahead.
Today, obviously, we know that Speaker of the National Assembly, he met with the prominent leaders and who happen to be ministers of the PTI government. He has met with them, and of course, he has emphasized on the importance of Parliament and how they can go towards a process, a smooth process of legislation. That would actually carry a few of the names which are acceptable in the opposition, like Shah Mahmood Qureshi.
But it doesn't change the numbers,
They
does
would,
it?
it won't change the number, but of course, if they would negotiate with the opposition leaders, then it might turn out to be something going ahead.
Right. Arif Chaudhary Sahab, tell us how important, how much is their need for judicial reforms? And if the government brings the reforms or the package to pass from the parliament, and if opposition is not going to support, what exactly happens?
As far as the importance of new legislation is concerned, I think, that's very imminent. That's very important because, present state of affairs as far as law is concerned and, these procedures are concerned, CPC, it required drastic changes. Criminal Procedure Code, it needs to be drastically changed.
Right.
Because these are still rotten procedures which are basically, they depict something decadent. And if people,
How old are they? How old are these laws?
More than a century.
More than a century.
Century, yeah.
For crimes committed today.
Yeah. Yeah, and
there is one
what
thing,
happened, in the
1886
meanwhile,
and
even if they tried to change, that's very pathetic. Somebody came, from Egypt. He was former Prime Minister of Egypt. He came here, Maruf al-Dawalibi. He stayed here and he was meant to, give a new shape to our laws. And what he did, he changed only the language.
How can a
foreign
prime minister can come to Pakistan?
That's very interesting. That's very interesting.
When was it?
In Zia's time.
Wow.
Zia-ul's time.
That explains a lot.
Dr. Maruf al-Dawalibi, former Prime Minister of Sudan.
Okay.
And he had Sudan. He had the experience of that society, and he came here and he gave new words, new phrases to our laws. I still, as a lawyer, I run far away from those phrases. I cannot use it because actually, as Allama Iqbal had said, अल्फाज के पेचों में उलझते नहीं दाना गवास को मतलब है सदफ से के गौर से. If somebody is hurt, you don't need to explain it in so many difficult words that hurt goes somewhere else and now come the word, and that's what is happening in the courts.
Right. So you have to change it, right?
You have to change drastically, and for that change you need opposition.
Okay.
And cooperation. As far as opposition's cooperation is concerned, you are, I would say, don't say 100%, but you are very right in saying that, their leadership is at stake. Their leadership has been challenged through these criminal cases. So they won't budge, and they would never cooperate with, because even the soft words cannot change their
mollify
tone.
them, yeah.
So that is, a very important where the Prime Minister had pointed out that, we have to bring
ordinances.
Ordinances actually are not the solution, but in a way there is a mode to at least buy some time, that once you bring some...
How much time, sir?
120 days.
4 months?
4 months time, and then you can extend it.
For 4
for
months?
another 4 months.
Okay. So 8 months in total?
Yeah, total. So
and then you cannot do it. The law
yeah,
lapses.
in the meanwhile, that you can present it before the parliament and things may change, you never know. Because
the party,
once you...
there might be some kind of change of heart, or the parties, there might be some change of loyalty in the parties.
Maybe forward blocks.
No, it won't work because 18th Amendment is very strong now.
No, it's not
You cannot floor cross.
It's not only floor crossing, but common sense may prevail, and they may realize that things, because once cases start coming up, cropping up, a star is created, and everybody is upset. But with the passage of time, things really get
Yeah, but first it
settled.
was first-tier leadership.
Yeah.
Now it has today. It has reached the accountability process, the second-tier leadership has.
One thing which government has to do, and I agree with Mr. Isa, that at least once they start doing something for the common people, what they get people on their side. It's not only for the next election, even right now, because things are very going both together against the government. On one hand there is opposition, on the other hand there is rising
this
prices
government
and
needs to remain popular
economic
among its
problem.
voters.
So if they try to mollify, or they try to please the common man, at least their miseries are lessened. Then things may
But
go.
here's the problem. I don't know. The government has actually set up the task for itself, right? It wants to reform. And I can see the logic. The problem is, at that time, it is going to be difficult. For the common man, it is going to be difficult for you and me, anybody who earns a living and who has to spend money to actually survive in this society. Now, the problem is, there are so many things that are happening simultaneously. And opposition is not helping. So what do? Do you suspend certain parts of your own outlook to compromise and to move the country forward, sir?
No, it's not that way, because everything, if you take as a whole, the government, I think, on one way, one thing that I really, I may not be missing that point, I just want to add, because those people who have a serious criticism over the NAB, they are going to be satisfied to see that they say, oh, look, all cases are basically for opposition, and no prosecution of PTI people. So now there's a good news for them that NAB has issued notices to PTI people as well. All those who are...
Can you name the people?
Most of all those, it's not one. Okay. Even the sitting chief minister, KPK,
Khyber Pakhtunkhwa,
and all others.
Okay.
So that is going to be across the board. So that will satisfy the those that propaganda who say that it's one side.
Okay.
But as
It
far
will
as this
defeat
question,
it will defeat the propaganda, but not the spirit of the opposition, because
yeah.
they want one compromise, and that is precisely about their leadership.
They want government to
You want to
forget.
say
Well, let me
Through criticism, they are going to use criticism against the government in order to reach out to the NAB, where it is not possible. Even if government comes to their rescue, it cannot, because government itself, because of certain cases which are cropping up, they have their own problems with NAB. So nobody.
Sir, I believe that the day this government starts delivering on its promise of providing 10 million jobs, on its promise of building 5 million homes, the day it starts delivering on that, I'm not saying that fulfilling that promise, even if it's achieved by 5% in another six months' time, let me tell you, it would be a smooth sailing for this government.
Here's the problem.
Because
as someone, you and I have both worked on economy, right? The problem is, when you want to actually create more jobs, you have to simplify the tax code. And to do that, and duties and rationalize everything, you need more laws. And who's going to help you do that? I mean, you need FDI in the country, don't you?
I completely agree. It's a
So
it's a
once
catch
again,
22. It's
catch
a catch
22.
22 situation that you are actually just revolving around a pole and there is no end to it. It's just happening and it's being
Thank you
like
for
repeated.
saying revolving around a not.
I think PTI must talk to People's Party. Why? Because last week People's Party's leaders, they actually said they will be helping government as long as it is something of public interest.
Okay.
You know, and this is what they did in previous tenure of their KPK government.
And what is going to be the first demand of PTI, People's Party?
They would be obviously, not on this. They would be. What they said was that we will be helping government if something pops up which actually helps the public interest.
Okay.
You know,
Like what?
It can be initiated by the government that they want to increase.
And NRO
Like whistleblower bill, they should introduce, and all these bills which have been introduced,
Are you sure that their
No, no,
leadership will
that's what
want
they will
that
go
kind
for.
of a law to be
they
passed?
should at least put a test, because to those words which have been uttered by People's Party, if they are really serious about that,
Exactly.
there are two benefits. One is that they shall also be checked, their credentials, whether they are serious or not. And the other,
Sir, with due respect, such a law might be approved by Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, not by Asif Zardari.
There's one
This is the
fact.
problem.
There's one fact I want
The
to
second
mention.
in the power structure might want that kind of law to blow a whistle, not the leadership.
There is one fact I want to mention here. Last 5 years of KP government, PTI's government, in last 5 years, they actually, I think, passed more than 180 laws in KP.
Okay.
And fair enough, they weren't like something which, can be.
They
can be
didn't have
considered-
huge majority.
Exactly, but they did work in the education sector,
Yeah,
and
but
them
they
laws
had
they helped in the
like-minded
education
parties
sector.
like Jamaat-e-Islami supporting.
They
them.
had.
Here, it is a coalition government, and add up all the coalition's numbers, and then add up all the opposition numbers on the other side, and you have barely 4 or 5, seats difference.
One more thing I would.
And then you have the problem of the upper house, the territorial house, the Senate. There, they don't even have numerical majority.
I think they can start with the
NRO?
laws. Not NRO, of course. They won't be going towards something like that. Reason being, if they go towards something like that, then they would be going against their own election slogans.
and nobody has that power, because it was only a dictator who could go for NRO.
Sir, but you
They
forget
cannot.
one thing, sir. When opposition talks about government, they are not merely thinking about Imran Khan Saab and PTI. They think that that all the state institutions are united, and he is their prime minister.
Here they are mistaken.
So,
because,
when
one
they
institution-
want some kind of concession, they want it from the system,
System,
not
no,
merely from
one
Imran Khan.
thing they must understand,
I'm
and
coming
that
to
is the judiciary.
Okay.
Because here where all those cases are concerned, nobody is going to do anything with those
Judiciary
cases
or
because
NAB?
judiciary.
Okay.
Yeah, because the cases which have been decided by judiciary and those cases which have been referred, even these references, Panama cases, they have been referred by judiciary. So judiciary is not the party where you can have any NRO with, because they have a system where there is a finality of judgments. Once a judgment is passed and a review is dismissed, this is a passed and closed transaction.
Right.
Yeah. So even the Chief Justice has no extraordinary power to forgive anybody and say, oh come on, if he cannot do political opt-out.
They cannot quash it.
They cannot.
Okay,
They
that is
cannot.
interesting. You
I
want
mean,
to say something?
during the last 5 years, how many legislations, how much of legislative business did PTI support the PMLN's government for?
Okay,
It's dirty.
okay.
And this is how it is.
What is dirty?
Like it
Politics is-
yes, the very fact that the
No, but-
PMLN and People's Party would never want PTI's government to succeed because that darkens their future
Okay.
in politics. And the
Okay.
second tier, the
Here's
very-
a hypothetical for you. if the government in next 15, 20 or 30 days was to decide for a new elections, who do you think was going to be returned in majority by the people?
That's a $1 million question.
But your estimate.
If I believe that PTI does
On Parliament again?
Yes, I think so. I think so.
Faisal.
Why? Because if PTI announces so, they would announce it only if they think they are in a position to get or to bag more seats. They'll do that only in such a case. Since it's hypothetical, I wouldn't go like too much into it. But
Right.
like in 30 days
it is
time,
supposed to be
in
hypothetical.
30 days time, I don't think that right now there is a downfall in the popularity graph of PTI. We have seen that their supporters are intact. They are defending them. They are
Actually,
defending the
you don't
policies.
get it. Their support might be actually on the increase. When you talk about the economic issues, I see that problem. But people realize someday you have to have reform. And every second year, every new government that comes with the promise of reform. And the problem is, yet another government comes. This time, PTI has some kind of integrity support. They believe that if it wants to, it can do it.
No, the problem is that for a good time, we have to go through a bad time, which
Right.
Prime Minister Imran Khan had been talking about.
And
we
people are
need that.
ready for that.
We need that good time, but we are not ready
I don't
to
know,
go
my
through that bad
experience has
time.
been, and Faisal, you can bail me out on this. My experience is many people that were very uncomfortable with all the previous governments tell me that 100 days is not a yardstick to gauge a government's performance, and they are hopeful that this government can deliver because it believes in what it is saying.
Exactly, and I would second your thought. I believe if PTI goes into another election or midterm election or whatever, it would turn out to be that they will be coming with a majority in the parliament. Okay. This is what I believe. Why? Because on the ground, people can see something happen. It is unprecedented.
Okay, let me reconcile Isa's point with Arif Saab, your point of view, and that is, you say,
even if they have to,
since we are talking about hypothetical, the way forward, pass an ordinance on all the laws, bring them, start delivering. After 4 months, extend it for 4 more months, and if you think that opposition doesn't come under moral pressure after that, then hold a new election.
That is, actually what I wanted to say. You have stolen my words, and I don't mind it.
Okay.
I love it because, that's the only way forward. Because, at present, things are not really known to the common man. He is depressed because, every day he see, prices are going up and there's a lot of propaganda, or you see what they deliver within 100 days. So best course would be that they should expose more, this so-called opposition. Okay. That their one-party agenda is to protect and preserve their corruption. And if we want to do something, they don't let us do. So for that matter, PTI has to bring new legislation and, start working on that. And, even whatever, on one hand, there are very serious things which they want to do on urgent basis. They should start, bringing ordinances.
Right.
And for certain things, where they really can afford to bring it before the parliament, they should bring it to the parliament. And people should know that this is what we wanted to do and this is what they were going to stop. And now we have come to...
High priority to ordinances, low priority to the parliament.
Yeah.
And there, if it is stuck, it gives you the optics.
Yes.
To actually bail out your point of view, right?
Yes, sure.
So on that note, I have to conclude the program. I'm being told that we have to conclude the program. Arif Chaudhary sir, thank you very much for your time. Raja Faisal, thank you very much for being here. Isa Naqvi, it is a pleasure having you here in the studio as well. Viewers, you have listened to our participants. We started with questioning the government strategy and the opposition strategy. Ended up turning it into some kind of a simulation, what can be done and who should do what. But it gives you a fair amount of idea what exactly can be done in coming days. The important thing is, there are two important things here to take away. One, democracy should continue to function. B, or two, that democracy should be seen to be performing and delivering for the common man, its main constituent as well. If these two things happen, any radical steps, adjustments within the democratic framework might be acceptable to the people. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching us. Take care.